Today we're looking at the resume section of the proficiency application. So if you go into your degree application manager, into your application, you'll see the resume tab. When you open that up, you'll see a template for resume. Take note of a few things before you get started though. Like this first one is extremely important. Do not include any information on your resume that occurred after December 31st of the previous year. For example, if you're applying in the year 2021 with a proficiency, nowhere on this resume should you have the year 2021. Everything should be from December 31st, 2020 and prior. That is incredibly important when you're getting scored on this resume, as anything after that date on this resume can cause you to forfeit points on this page. Also, you'll see you do have a character count here that is important to follow as well. And then the resume may not exceed 3 pages maximum when it's printed out. So with all that in mind, we're going to get started today. We do have Mr. Chip Blanton here going to go over some helpful tips as well as how to complete this resume very simply over the long haul using AET. So Mr. Chip, thank you again.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's so important that you don't put anything after December 31st of the previous year. It can actually cause you to be disqualified, or at the worst disqualified, but at the best, you're going to lose a lot of points. I know one particular student that would have probably been a national finalist, but had the previous year's on the resume as played volleyball, which absolutely had nothing to do with what their proficiency application was. They had volleyball team listed in that year, and it caused that to go all the way down to a silver. And one of the judges told me that was one that they were looking at that was probably going to be a national finalist. Then, but they actually ended up silver, which is good. But what could it have been otherwise? As you go through this, you're going to see a lot of different things, your objectives. Now, when you're doing objectives for your resume, think of who, what, when, where, why, and how, and be specific about your objectives, and almost think of it like a SMART goal. I've done a lot of work lately on SMART goals, and this is something that you need to think of it in that way. What do you want to do? When do you want to do it? Where do you want to do it? And then all this other. This is going to what kind of gets their attention first, and they're going to read. Now, judges read these. You think, well, they'll just give you 3 points for this resume and go on. No, that's not the way it works. They'll really read it and see what your objectives are for your future and how you're going to try to achieve them. And of course, your agricultural coursework is going to be on there. That will download when you link it back to AET. Jared, if you'll move up to the top there and show them, let's make sure they click that and you link it back to AET when you get through. If you don't do that, you're just going to have blank space. But if you've gone through an AET and kept up with this as you've done your journals, then that's going to all link back together. It's very important that you keep up with that and keep up with it in pretty good detail. Now, a resume like this is not just for a proficiency award or a state FFA degree or American FFA degree. It's also something that students going to be able to carry with them. I know Stanley Clark and I were talking one time, and he was telling about his son having to come back and get a resume from after he had already graduated. And if you've got this, and even if this student's graduated, you can make them inactive. And as long as you don't ever delete somebody, because if you can keep that active or inactive, and then make it back active, the resume is still going to be there. All you got to do is run it off and hand it to the student. They don't have to start over from scratch. as you go through, you're going to be able to see all the different things that you're going to have listed, your SAE, and you can see the word count. Anytime you see a word count in AET, that's something that's going to flow over into a proficiency application or an state FFA degree or American FFA degree. Community service, when I do checks for American FFA degrees, community service is the first thing that I check, and make sure that it is service to the community, not service to the chapter or service to your church or something like that. I know used to, it's not so much lately, but used to we get taught Sunday school. Well, that's not a community service to teach Sunday school. That's a service to your church. Every once in a while I'll see sold tickets to FFA barbecue. That's not a community service. That's a service to your chapter. So make sure it's community service, and just go through and fill it out. List your awards and honors. List everything, your certificates, your skills, all these things that are going to be able, you're going to be able to have when you need them for a college application, state FFA degree, American FFA degree, job application. It's all right there. And then, of course, your references, and be sure that you do those correctly with name, address, and phone number in case they want to get in touch with those folks.
Yep. So let's show them how to do this in AET, and then we'll come back and, as you said, we'll load it in and let them see what that would look like.
Okay. All right. We'll go over, let's say that one way is your FFA activities. You can go to the gavel there in the middle column, and you can click on your FFA activities offices that you had, and all you got to do is add an office. You can select that. Say you were chapter president, and you select the date, and it's going to show up again, just like all the other things in AET. It's going to show up as today's date, unless you go in and change it like Jared's doing here, and make sure you get the date that you started at, and then your ending date. You want to make sure that that's coincides with what we've talked about before about not going past December 31st, and then you're going to return it to AET. You can add more offices there if you want to. You can do your FFA committee memberships there. You can do that. Judging card, it's going to pick up on all that you do as well. There's committees that you could have been a member of. Now, one thing that you're going to have to do is make sure as you're doing this that you had an ag class listed when you put your starting date. If you don't have an ag class listed, it's going to pop up there that you were not in an ag class at that time. So make sure that you have your classes on the schedule, and also that you that those kids listed and when they are in an ag class, because it won't show up if you don't. Other things that you can do on there, you go to manage your resume there, and you can click on that, manage your resume information, and it's going to let you put in there when you got your discovery degree based on the year it says you started ag. Then green hand degree, chapter degree. And you can save those. You can also go down and any awards that you got, you can put those in. And it's a good idea to do these as you get them, because if you're doing it as you get them, then it's there. You're not going to have to go back and try to remember, hey, what was that date? When did I do that? When was I the high scorer in the floriculture contest? So if that, add new, and then you can go down and you can edit it, you can delete it, just like you can anything else in AET. we're just gonna go down through and add a few things so to show you how it flows over. This is one way that AET can really be a help to you and your students by keeping up with all this stuff as you go. Having a FFA Friday or something like that, and let them catch up on their stuff, or on FFA Monday, and just take some time to put some things in your resume, and give them a little grade on it. AET badges and certificates. Now the badges themselves will show up as you use AET. The more you use it, the better chance you got of winning a badge. Now, I think the blue ribbon badges are maybe the top 10% in the United States as far as usage, and then I think a gold badge maybe the top 5. I can't remember just exactly on that, but they'll just show up and you'll have badges.
Okay, so we've got some examples in here, Mr. Chip. One thing you talked about earlier was the objective. Now, Barney, we're going to skip over judging card. Barney, while he says he competed, it was in his mind probably, but the objective you mentioned earlier was a very crucial part.
You just go back to the who, what, when, where, why, and how on that, and your goals are, just go through and tell what your goals are and how you're going to hope to achieve them. If you plan on going to college, where you plan on going, if you want to go into the workforce, talk about that. If you want to, whatever your goals and objectives are, that's what you want to talk about in this part right here. And I don't think there's a word count on this, but it will flow into AET. I think it'll let you pretty much write as much as you want. But you don't want to do so much that a judge is going to get tired of reading it.
Right. And I'm going to keep everything very short today. Obviously, like we talked about in the past, be detailed, but like Mr. Chip said, be brief. Don't add words for words' sake. Make sure all your words are meaningful, be as detailed as possible.
Be sure and hit save.
Double check that. Do that twice just to make sure. And then we'll put in a couple references here.
I think it's a good idea to call your references and let them know that you're using them as a reference. And be sure, I think they count off a little bit if you don't put the phone number down there. Even though they're not going to call them, they need to get a phone number down.
All right, so now that we have some information in, Mr. Chip, we'll go back into the application, correct?
That's correct. And then hit load from AET. And there they are.
We have the objective we typed in there. We have the classes and courses that were entered in. And glad I didn't go back too far. Some of my records probably aren't going to show up because I have my first class in 19 instead of, I think I put some of those green hand and chapter degrees in previous years. That's just, once again, this is an account we use to play with, but make sure your kids' data is put in correctly and everything should pull correctly. There's my projects.
All you'd have to do to fix that is go back and change your first day in ag. You can go back and it'll pull it all up there. So if you went back to and picked up a class in 2016, then it would pick it up and put it in there.
And once it's in here, you can this is one of those things on the application. You can go in and
Yeah.
edit on the actual application. So clean up formatting. Like I don't like, let's say, how my references came out. So I could always clean that up a little bit in here.
Yes. And you can add things, and if you wanted to add your discovery degree and your green hand, things like that, you could add it right there. Make sure that those skills show up. You can add them here, of course, but make sure as you go through and do proficiency application, state degrees and things like that, those skills are showing up, and that they show up here, because that's going to be something an employer or maybe a tech school or something like that is going to be looking for, is what skills do you have?
Absolutely. And like we said, Bonnie, you can come in here and fill this in on the actual application. If you'll have your students doing this in AET throughout their whole career, it will pull everything in, and it just helps you not forget things. It helps you just stay better organized. And like we said, some of this is pulled from here. Those skills and things those can pull over from here as well as other parts of AET.
Absolutely. There's several places on AET that it's going to pull from, your offices and things like that. But in fact, I think the test your knowledge part is going to pull in there. There's time and FFA committees, competition activities, all that's going to pull. Community service activities is going to pull over there. Again, remember, when you're doing community service, make sure it's community service, not chapter service.
Right. So easy way to get easy points. The biggest thing again is the date, making sure you don't have anything from the current year, and make sure to not sell yourself short on this area.
Right. You give yourself all the credit that you're supposed to have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Mr. Chip, we appreciate you showing us some helpful tips here. And like we said, use AET over time, and then we'll make everything easier when it's finally time to do an application.
That's right. Absolutely. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next video, where we'll be looking at pictures, one of my favorite parts of the application.